The days after the disappearance of Maya Rivera and Elena Fuentes were a puzzle of unanswered signals. Their last known movements traced along the Serpentine Trail, yet nothing in the forest matched the pattern one would expect from a simple lost hiker scenario. Investigators turned to the evidence left behind. 2 devices found in Maya's abandoned backpack, a black Android and a white iPhone. Both devices had been inactive for days, yet each revealed a chilling story through small traces of digital activity. On May 3rd, Maya's Android attempted to call emergency services at 7:12 a.m., but no connection was made. A minute later, another attempt failed as well. Later that afternoon, Elena's iPhone tried the same, dialing 911 repeatedly, but each call ended without signal. It became clear the women were still alive, trapped somewhere remote, attempting to reach help, but their attempts were futile. By May 5th, the Android powered down entirely. The iPhone, however, told a stranger story. On May 6th, it was powered on, yet the correct PIN was never entered. Multiple attempts to unlock it followed, all unsuccessful. No calls were made, no messages sent, no photographs taken. Only the faint glow of the screen in a silent room that may have been filled with shadows. Between May 7th and May 10th, brief activations were recorded. Each time the screen turned on and then off within minutes. It seemed as if someone or something was trying to use it, unsure how, or perhaps only watching. The final recorded activity occurred on May 10th at 11:03 a.m. The device stayed on for 52 minutes. No input, no calls, no photos, just a quiet, glowing rectangle in the dark. When it finally powered down, it would not be used again. Even more disturbing was what never happened. No farewell messages, no pleas left in notes, no digital traces of their final thoughts. The silence, more than the failed calls, became a haunting record of desperation. In the aftermath, theories began to circulate. Some suggested a sudden misfortune, perhaps a natural hazard along the trail. Others hinted at foul play. The devices alone could not provide answers, only questions, and they continued to multiply. Every activation, every failure, every empty minute of screen light left a trail that investigators followed, a trail that painted a picture of fear and isolation more vivid than any photograph could capture. And through it all, the forest remained indifferent, keeping its secrets hidden beneath the canopy, just out of reach. The story of Maya and Elena, preserved in these digital fragments, remains one of the most unsettling mysteries of recent years. And as investigators continue to piece together the fragments, the questions linger, questions that may never be answered. Months passed before the remains of Maya Rivera and Elena Fuentes were finally discovered, long after search teams had scoured the jungle without success. The delayed discovery immediately sparked speculation that a third party may have been involved. Were their belongings deliberately arranged? Could the camera have been used to fabricate a false timeline? These questions lingered, shadowing the case and fueling endless debate. Among the many theories, one particularly controversial idea emerged, the unrequited love theory. According to this claim, Maya allegedly harbored romantic feelings for Elena, which were never returned. Proponents of the theory suggested a heated argument escalated, ending tragically with Elena being pushed from a cliff and Maya wandering the jungle in guilt. Yet, upon closer examination, the theory collapses. There is no evidence of a romantic relationship, no signs of struggle, and no proof of violence. Most investigators dismiss it as pure speculation, though its emotional intensity allowed it to persist, haunting the narrative. Even darker claims emerged, the organ trafficking theory. Some alleged that the host family near the jungle had abducted the women, holding them captive before killing them. While horrifying, no credible evidence supports this. No witnesses, no forensic proof, no verified connections. This theory survives only in whispers, fueling fear, but not fact. Despite extreme theories, many experts continue to support the accident theory, a far simpler yet tragic explanation. In this view, Maya and Elena likely strayed from the trail, became disoriented, and succumbed to the jungle's harsh conditions. One injury could have forced the other to search desperately for help, with exposure, hunger, and the unforgiving terrain ultimately claiming them. While painful to accept, this scenario aligns most closely with the available evidence. Their final hours remain uncertain, leaving behind fragments of fact amidst vast speculation. The case never truly faded from public attention. Over the past 5 years, it has continued to captivate audiences worldwide, sparking debate and renewed scrutiny. In 2021, Dutch authors Marger West and Jurgen Snoren reignited interest with their book, meticulously reviewing police files and official records. Their findings highlighted overlooked details and inconsistencies, giving the story new momentum and prompting the public to question what they thought they knew. The jungle may have kept its secrets, but the questions it raised remain very much alive and unresolved.
मिस्र की वसीओ अरीज सल्तनत, आसमान को छूते हुए महल्लात और सोने के तख्त पर बैठा एक ऐसा शख्स जिसकी गर्दन कभी किसी के आगे नहीं झुकी थी। उसके पास ताकत थी, फौज थी, जादूगर थे और वो दरिया जो उसके हुक्म पर बहते थे। उसके तकब्बुर का ये आलम था कि उसने आसमान की तरफ उंगली उठाकर कहा, मैं तुम्हारा सबसे बड़ा रब हूं। लेकिन फिर दुनिया ने एक खौफनाक मंजर देखा। वही बादशाह जो पानियों पर हुक्म चलाता था, एक बूंद पानी को तरस गया। मिस्र की गलियों में खौफ का राज था। कभी पानी खून बन रहा था, तो कभी आसमान से टिड्डी दल का।
The questions raised by the work of Marger West and Jurgen Snoren led many to wonder, had the official investigation overlooked critical evidence? As April 2024 marked the 10th anniversary of Maya and Elena's disappearance, the case remained painfully alive in public memory. Calls for reanalysis grew louder. Advances in forensic science promised greater accuracy than ever before, offering hope that hidden clues might finally be uncovered, evidence that could reveal what truly happened in their final days. In September 2023, a film exploring the women's last known moments reignited interest. By revisiting the investigation and highlighting alleged missteps, it offered an alternative perspective on how the evidence had been handled. Viewers began asking difficult questions. Were crucial clues ignored? Did early investigative errors shape the outcome? Media attention surged once more, and the possibility that something vital had been missed could no longer be dismissed. Year after year, the mystery deepened. New interpretations, resurfaced evidence, and persistent public curiosity ensured the story refused to fade. For those who adhere to the accident theory, the tragedy has a painful yet definitive conclusion. For others, questions remain unanswered. Strange photographs, fragmented remains, phone logs and unresolved forensic details continue to fuel discussion across podcasts, forums, and investigative outlets. Some see a devastating misadventure in the harsh El Pianista trail. Others sense something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Countless theories have emerged, each more unsettling than the last, and yet no definitive answer has ever prevailed. As technology evolves, the hope persists that one key discovery may finally reveal the truth. Until then, the mystery endures. Was it simply a terrible accident, or something far darker waiting in the shadows?
Story 4. I didn't do this. I'm sorry. We only wanted him gone. We never wanted him dead. The words spill out in fragments, heavy with panic and denial, as if repeating them might undo what's already happened. Investigators believe the bullet struck the back of the victim's head. Nearby, a mother and daughter are escorted away in handcuffs, witnesses to a cold, calculated killing. Somewhere close, a quiet voice attempts to soothe the chaos. I know, honey. I know. Officers crouch to eye level with a small child. What's your name? How old are you? The questions are gentle, but reality is cruel. The shooting happened right in front of her, yet neither suspect was at the exact moment it occurred. Come here, sweetheart. It's okay. Arms reach out, voices soften. Strangers try to comfort a child whose world has just collapsed. It is March 19th, 2023 in Santa Rosa County. Deputies rush into the Cayo Grande apartment complex after frantic calls reporting gunfire. What they find is haunting. 24-year-old Colby Vincent lies dead outside his apartment. Groceries scattered across the floor, frozen in a moment of sudden tragedy. Just feet away, his 4-year-old daughter Presley cries for her father. Detectives begin knocking on doors, searching for anyone who might have heard or seen something. "Ma'am, did you hear anything?" they ask, pleading for even the smallest detail. Every sound, every voice, every noise could hold a clue. Witnesses described the scene outside the apartment. "He's my husband," one said. "We heard one gunshot. It came from over there." Another recalled a man urging them inside, claiming he heard something and thought someone had fallen. The timeline remains blurry. Estimates shift between minutes before police arrived. Some say 4 to 6 minutes, maybe less. Others recall suddenly seeing flashing lights and sirens. No one reported hearing footsteps, sparking theories. Perhaps the shooter approached quietly, parked elsewhere, or was already gone before anyone realized what had happened. Police released a description: a white male, around 6 feet tall, average build, possibly bearded, wearing a light or neutral-colored jacket. Meanwhile, little Presley's life had already changed forever. Was this a robbery gone wrong, or something more personal? Inside the apartment, officers noted the smell of marijuana, several containers, and an open designer bag. The scene raised more questions than answers. At first glance, it looked drug-related. Then again, maybe it wasn't. Maybe this was personal, something rooted closer to home. The groceries suggested Colby had just arrived,
starting to unload his car. The apartment door was open, his vehicle nearby. Detectives believed he may have been confronted from behind. A neighbor mentioned hearing raised voices, an argument perhaps, but an argument alone doesn't explain a gunshot wound to the back of the head, unless he was trying to escape, running toward his apartment. Then there's the delay. How long did it take for the shooting to be reported? How long was little Presley standing there alone? As the investigation unfolded, Colby's parents, Bradford and Megan Minton, described a man trying to rebuild his life, working hard so he could spend more time with his daughter. At the time of his death, Colby had worked at Walmart and later at a marijuana dispensary. Yet many details of his final days remained unanswered, lost in a story that ended far too soon. The location wasn't initially Shalimar. It came later. He had worked for a different company, then transferred when the Shalimar store opened. The name? MUV, or at least that's what they thought. When a new location was built, Colby was promoted into management. By all appearances, he was optimistic about the future, until his parents received the call no parent is ever prepared for. "What's going on? Are you the father of Colby Vincent?" "I'm his stepfather. Is Megan home?" "Yes, she's inside." "Can you bring her out here? Is everything okay?" "No, it's not." As investigators dug deeper, uncomfortable questions surfaced. Could Colby have been dealing drugs on the side? Detectives emphasized it didn't change the tragedy. It wasn't about judgment, but understanding the full picture, because the truth, however complicated, opens every investigative door. There were signs that raised eyebrows, large amounts of cash, expensive items inside the apartment. Investigators asked his family if they had noticed anything concerning. Their answer was firm. If such behavior had existed, they never would have helped him hire a lawyer to regain custody of his daughter. Yet someone else saw Colby's life differently. After Presley's birth, Colby made choices that worried her mother deeply, choices involving drugs and a lifestyle she felt was unsafe for their child. She moved back home. When Presley was 14 months old, Colby moved out. At first, visits occurred every Saturday for a couple of hours, but slowly excuses piled up. Roommates doing cocaine, other distractions. Each excuse increased concern. Then came social media posts, pictures of drug use, stories of parties, driving while high, acid trips, openly shared. Seeing these choices was troubling enough. Seeing their daughter included in that world was worse. It didn't feel safe. Presley was placed on government-assisted food and health insurance, triggering child support proceedings. Suddenly, Colby demanded equal custody. Her mother was not comfortable, not at all. When asked how he planned to care for Presley while working, he said he would leave her with his girlfriend. That was the final straw. The girlfriend lived the same risky lifestyle. It became painfully clear there were two versions of Colby Vincent, one trying to rebuild his life, and one still trapped in choices that would leave far more questions than answers. At that point, she says she had no choice but to get a lawyer. What he told her terrified her. If something happened to Presley with Colby, the responsibility would fall not just on him, but on her too.
There was nothing in writing, no court order outlining custody terms.
The stakes had been clear. If Presley accidentally got into drugs, cocaine, acid, anything, and overdosed, Rachel could face jail for child neglect, abuse, even her child's death. She drew a line. She told Colby she wasn't handing over custody, not yet. If the court forced it, she would face him there. Until then, she would not risk her daughter's life. Rachel Moore had long been worried. Colby worked at a marijuana dispensary. After the shooting, police found over $1,000 in cash and containers of medical marijuana with his name on them. Had a drug-centered lifestyle turned deadly? When asked why their relationship ended, Rachel didn't hesitate. Drugs. No matter where she placed him, no matter how she changed the environment, the drugs always followed. Once living on their own, things spiraled. He started selling, then growing drugs in their home. Rachel recalls holding her child, realizing the danger. She told him it had to stop. Their daughter was living in the middle of it. Months passed. Nothing changed. Rachel began to see the trajectory of his life, and she refused to let Presley be dragged along. What haunted her most was what her daughter might have seen. Some things, once seen, can never be unseen. After the shooting, she was instructed not to question Presley, not to ask anything. The wrong word could interfere with evidence, so she did the only thing she could, let her daughter sleep. Rachel did not. She lay awake, panicking, wondering how to protect her child and whether Presley had witnessed everything. Then investigators noticed a chilling coincidence. After a year and a half with no custody exchanges, the first handover occurred. That very night, Colby Vincent was shot and killed outside his apartment. At first, investigators considered a drug deal gone wrong. It would explain a lot, but the scene refused to cooperate. Groceries remained untouched, his wallet in place, keys unmoved. Nothing was taken. Then came another detail, one that immediately shifted the case. Christina Moore, Rachel's mother, was at the scene within hours. When officers asked, "You're Presley's mom?" she corrected them, "No, I'm Rachel's mom, Presley's grandmother." Her presence raised questions. Why was she there so fast? She explained neighbors Dustin and Shelby Henderson had called, who then contacted her. A chain of phone calls driven by shock and panic. Then the detective delivered the news. Is Colby okay? The answer was blunt, devastating. Colby was deceased. These kinds of killings rarely happen at random, the detective explained. To understand what happened, they needed to know Colby's recent life, who he'd been talking to, what he'd been involved in. Christina's reaction was immediate and emotional. She hadn't spoken to Colby in almost a year due to an ongoing custody battle. Colby wanted his daughter, but his lifestyle terrified the family. She explained that the court case had gone sideways. Despite not seeing Presley for a full year, Colby was suddenly granted 50-50 custody. This was the first time he'd seen his daughter in a year. They had warned the judge about their concerns, the lifestyle, the choices, the risks. Christina hoped he'd changed, prayed he'd pull himself together. Describing him, her voice softened. Colby was a good person, she insisted. I loved him like one of my own children. But somewhere along the way, he became consumed by drugs, especially marijuana. He swore it was all harmless. They had seen the pictures. Acid, parties, risky behavior. Then he filed for equal custody. Now standing at the scene of his death, the pieces began to connect, not into a clear answer, but into a far more complicated and unsettling picture than a simple drug deal gone wrong. For most of that year, Colby only saw Presley for 3 or 4 hours on Saturdays. That had been the routine. When detectives asked when that changed, the answer stopped them cold.
It changed today. Just days earlier, they had been in court. The judge granted 50-50 custody. And today, this very day, Colby picked up his daughter for the first time in a year. Christina struggled to hold herself together. The shock hit again. She fought the urge to vomit as reality sank in. The pickup occurred in a public parking lot around 6:30 p.m. Rachel was there, along with her fiancé, Chris. They stayed in the car while Christina walked Presley over to Colby. Christina hadn't seen Colby in a year. She didn't know if he'd cleaned up. Only she knew what happened next. When asked how the exchange went, she said simply, calm, normal. She asked only one thing, whether childcare was arranged for the week, knowing this was his first time having Presley overnight.
And that he worked. What no one knew then was that these were the last moments of normalcy. Colby had just reunited with his daughter, hours before his death, the first time in a year. A moment both he and his mother had been waiting for. Detectives asked if he seemed nervous. Christina shook her head. He was ecstatic. They had parked near a handicap spot, right between AT&T and Publix. Colby used the court-approved parenting app to message Rachel exactly as his lawyer instructed. When she replied that they were there, he stepped out, phone in hand. His lawyer had advised him to record the exchange. Christina says the video should still be on his phone. At first, he couldn't see them. Then he smiled and said, "I see you." She offered to follow him and keep recording. He told her no, he had it. Moments later, they watched him walking back through the parking lot, grinning ear to ear. Presley was just as excited. He buckled her into the car as she proudly showed off her new boots. He asked where she wanted to eat. "Waffle House," she said without hesitation. He laughed, asking what she planned to order. "Waffles," she replied. After that, they drove back to his apartment. Colby opened the door, stepped aside, and let her daughter walk in. It was the beginning of their time together, and it would be the last. Colby showed Presley her room. She ran inside, excited, playing with her toys, while he sat on the floor with her, laughing and soaking in every moment. It was quiet, normal, exactly what everyone had hoped for. Around 7:15, Christina and her husband stepped outside to grab the car seat from their vehicle. She and Colby worked together to install it in his car, struggling until they laughed at how difficult it was. It felt light, almost happy. They decided to leave, giving Colby time alone with his daughter. They said their goodbyes and headed home, making a quick stop at Walgreens before returning. By 7:30, they were settled in for the night. Everything felt ordinary. Around 8:30, Christina sent Colby a message. She'd suddenly thought of something. Maybe he should pick up some pull-ups just in case. No one was completely sure if Presley was fully potty trained. Colby replied casually it was a good idea. They'd just finished eating, and he was about to head to Walmart. Nothing about that exchange hinted at what was coming next. As the timeline tightens, the question becomes unavoidable. Were Rachel and Christina right to let Presley go with her father? Or were they the ones Colby should have feared all along? Rachel later described the custody exchange again. They pulled into the public parking lot at 6:30. Her mother handed Presley over. They were supposed to go straight home. That was it. But investigators pressed harder. Could anyone want to hurt Colby? And why? Rachel's answer pointed back to the custody battle. She hadn't won. She had been confident she would keep Presley from him, confident the judge would side with her. Now that didn't happen. Suddenly, attention shifted. The focus turned to the mother-daughter pair. How far would someone go to keep a child away from her father? Detectives pushed the idea carefully. Maybe someone thought they were protecting Rachel or protecting Presley. Rachel insisted that wasn't who she was.
She said she wasn't aggressive. She didn't surround herself with violent people. She repeated it over and over. These are the people she knew. This is all she knew. They asked who she had talked to in the days leading up to the shooting. Anyone who saw her upset, crying, or distressed. Friends? Family? Relatives? No. She said, not like that. Growing up Southern Baptist, she explained, you don't talk about things like this. You don't broadcast your fears.
Problems. You avoid them. The detective leans in. He tells Rachel this is her chance to be completely honest about suspicions, about ideas she may have pushed aside, because they have a picture of the person responsible. He warns her if she's holding something back and the investigation proves it, it won't end well. Rachel says she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know if someone was trying to impress her, save her, or protect her. She says she's spoken to everyone the same way. The detective presses further. He asks her to be specific. Who did you talk to? He says. Go through your phone. Start listing names. At this point, this story isn't just about that night. It's about who knew what and when. The pressure tightens. This is your chance to help yourself, he says. This is about your daughter, about protecting her. Rachel hesitates, overwhelmed, like she's carrying something too heavy to put into words. The detective leans in closer. I get the feeling you have an idea of what might have happened, he says, and you're scared to say it. But right now, this moment is when you need to speak, not for you, for your daughter. He's direct. If it turns out you had anything to do with this, or knew more than you admitted, it wouldn't end well. This is the time. Rachel shakes her head. She says she doesn't know. The detective sighs. He explains that there has already been significant communication uncovered in relation to the case. Because of that, they're going to take her phone as evidence. Rachel freezes. Then, quietly, she asks if she can at least remove her card. He agrees. She asks when she'll get the phone back. It depends, he says. Once we extract the data, the faster it happens, the faster you'll get it back. But the unease doesn't lift. To investigators, none of this feels random anymore. The timing, the custody ruling, the first exchange in over a year, everything lines up too neatly. One question keeps coming back. Who else knew what was happening? Who else knew about the custody decision, the pickup, the apartment? Who else could have acted? Rachel says she doesn't know anyone who would hurt someone like that. She's trying, truly trying, but nothing comes to mind. The detective tells her they already have an image of the person responsible. It's only a matter of time before they identify him. And yet, every lead keeps circling back to the same place, the custody battle. Then he turns his attention to the family. He explains he doesn't want them blindsided if the investigation leads back toward them, because if it does, it won't be connected to Colby's world. It will be connected to theirs.
And that kind of outcome, it won't play out well, especially where Presley's future is concerned. The detective asks again, think hard. Who might have taken matters into their own hands? Who might have believed the courts failed and decided to fix things themselves? Who did you talk to? Who knew what was happening? The answer is thin. There aren't many people, she says. A couple of longtime friends, older women, people she insists wouldn't be capable of something like this. Investigators listen, but they aren't convinced. Because at this stage, the case is no longer just about a man shot outside his apartment. It's about motive, and who loved that little girl enough to cross a line. Investigators make it clear. There's already been a lot of communication uncovered surrounding this case. There always is. Rachel's phone has been taken as evidence, and warrants are in motion to search its contents. But that's not enough. To fully understand what happened, they need more than one device. Now they need to take another phone. Confusion sets in immediately. "So I won't even have my phone?" she asks. "No," they say. Everyone's phone has to be collected. Every message, every call, every data point downloaded. When will it be returned? The question comes fast. The faster we can access it, the faster it comes back, they explain. Rachel provides her passcode. That speeds things up. Without it, they can still access the phone, but it takes much longer. In today's world, a phone isn't just a device. It's everything. Work, communication, daily life. The detective acknowledges that. Then he asks for the passcode. He shifts gears, confirming identities. Chris, Rachel's fiancé. They've been together since October 2020. The detective introduces himself, Captain Jones. He explains they've been working non-stop, trying to piece everything together. He thanks them for coming. Then he circles back to the emotional core. He asks how the grandmother reacted when she had to hand Presley over. The answer, exactly what he expected. Everyone was crying. Everyone was devastated. Captain Jones continues. They've worked countless homicide investigations, and there's one detail they simply cannot ignore: the coincidence. The same day Colby is granted custody of his daughter, the first time he's seen her in a year, he's shot and killed outside his apartment. That fact alone, he explains, naturally places scrutiny on Rachel. Not because they are accusing her, but because they have to understand whether someone else may have acted on her behalf. Was there anyone so angry, so emotionally invested, that they might have taken matters into their own hands? Chris answers firmly. Not that he knows of. Not anyone at all. Tension rises. Questions turn legal. One asks about warrants, why the phone can be seized without one. The response is blunt. They don't need a warrant to take it. They need a warrant to search it. Frustration bubbles over. The phone is essential. It's his livelihood. The detective doesn't argue. He says he understands, but given the circumstances, every box has to be checked. This is how they clear people, not accuse them. Lawyers are mentioned, numbers exchanged, but the message stays the same. The faster they can rule things out, the faster they can get answers, the faster the investigation can move forward. The faster things can be ruled out, the faster life can return to normal. And until then, no detail, no coincidence can be ignored. The tone in the room shifts. There's no shouting, no raised voices, just tension, thick, uncomfortable. The detective explains he's not trying to trap anyone. He's trying to make sure everyone is being honest. No misdirection, no carefully arranged story. Chris nods. He says he understands. He insists he's not dodging anything, not playing games. He knows how this looks, and he isn't offended by the scrutiny. But as the questioning continues, something darker begins to surface.
Rachel had consistently described Colby as an unfit father, reckless, drug-obsessed, neglectful, even dangerous. She admitted she didn't want him anywhere near their daughter. And then, almost without realizing it, she lets something slip. She tells them she had spoken to her former stepfather, Jason Curtis, about the custody battle. On Monday, she says, she called him in a panic. She told him about the court date. She was spiraling, terrified of losing control. Jason told her not to worry, that it wasn't something she needed to stress over. She kept messaging him, explaining everything that was happening. Then he sent something strange. Pictures. Knives, guns, medieval-looking weapons. At the time, she brushed it off. He lived far away. That was just his personality, she said. She thanked him for making her feel better. Only later did it start to feel wrong. When investigators ask how he sent the images, she says Facebook Messenger. Then she admits something else. She deleted the conversation as soon as everything hit the fan. She suddenly realized how bad it might look. Then comes the question that makes her voice falter. Did she think he would actually come down and shoot Colby? She says she doesn't know. She insists she never believed that would really happen. But then she remembers something else. Jason had called her the night before. He told her she didn't need to worry anymore, that everything was fine. The timing matters. The call came around 9:30, maybe 10 p.m., not long after Colby was killed. Investigators press her. When he said she didn't need to worry anymore, did she ask what he meant? She says yes. She was confused, but it was a phone call, not a text. He didn't explain. He just said everything was fine, that he had to go, and then he hung up. Her reaction is raw. She keeps repeating how strange it felt, how it didn't make sense. She insists he never came to her house, never stopped by. She never thought it was real, not until after. She tells them she'd been drowning in anxiety all week, so severe, she says, she was wetting the bed from stress. Then this happened. Investigators ask if she gave Jason Colby's address. She says no. She swears she didn't give him anything. That's when they warn her, calmly but firmly. When they forensically download her phone, they won't just see what's visible. Deleted messages, messenger conversations, everything can be recovered. Data doesn't disappear the way people think it does. She nods. She says she knows. She insists she's telling the truth. They remind her honesty now is the only way forward, because if they later uncover messages she didn't mention, it won't look good. She looks resigned. She admits it already looks terrible. Then she adds something else, something that makes the room go quiet. She might have joked about paying for his gas. She immediately backtracks, says she didn't mean it seriously. She didn't think he would actually come. She didn't know. She keeps repeating that. When asked again if she gave him the address, she says no. When asked if she spoke to anyone who might have shared it, she says she doesn't know who he talks to. They weren't close. This wasn't planned. She reminds them she called him on Sunday, told him she was at the custody drop-off, told him what was happening. Later, he called her back and told her not to worry anymore. When investigators ask when she mentioned paying for gas, she hesitates. Maybe Monday, after court. She admits how awful it sounds. She admits the anxiety nearly broke her. The detective pulls it back to the core issue. This isn't about cornering her. It's about protecting her daughter. It's about understanding how someone could have known where Colby lived. She says it again. She doesn't know. She insists the gas comment was just words, just stress, just panic. They can read the messages themselves, she says. There's no denying it now. What once looked like coincidence is starting to feel like something else entirely. It was a joke, Rachel insists through tears. I said, LOL, at this point I'd pay for your gas if it means I stop having to change my sheets. That's all it was. She keeps repeating it.
She was trying to make them understand. She never asked anyone to hurt Colby. Not like that. Not ever. Detectives listen. But by now, they've gone far beyond words. As they dig deeper, they uncover more than nervous messages and poorly timed jokes. Discussions about weapons, talk about gas money, conversations that suggest coordination, intent, and movement toward Florida. What once looked like coincidence now resembles something far darker. To investigators, it begins to look like a plan. They return to Rachel with a decision already made. Rachel, one detective says, we've spoken with the state attorney. Based on everything we have right now, we're placing you under arrest. Panic, disbelief. She says she won't resist, but she doesn't understand. She didn't do this. Being arrested will ruin her life. It'll be on her record. Everyone will see it. The detective explains, calmly, this is only the beginning, an early step in the investigation. An arrest is not a conviction. Rachel mentions another case, arson, where she'd heard the same assurances. It doesn't comfort her. She's told to stand up. Handcuffs are placed on her wrists. Arrangements are made to transport her to jail. What am I being arrested for? She asks. The initial charge, tampering with evidence. Possibility of accessory after the fact charges being considered. Accessory to murder? She says, stunned. I didn't do this. Sometimes the truth sets you free, the detective replies quietly. This isn't a sentence, it's part of the process. But the fear is already there. If someone else pulled the trigger and she's charged with homicide, she knows what comes next. Jail, charges, and worst of all, losing her child. While Rachel sits in custody, investigators shift focus to the man she confided in, her former stepfather, Jason Curtis. Jason lives in Alabama. When detectives approach him, he insists he was at work on Sunday, the day he'd been told the killing happened. He recalls being near Highway 69, across from a local business. He claims there was no motive, no reason. But that doesn't stop what comes next. He's placed under arrest on an outstanding warrant. Florida authorities are on their way to take custody. As the investigation expands, another detail emerges. Jason's partner confirms they were in Florida when the murder occurred. Officers stop her as well, ask about guns, about Jason, then the word murder. She's stunned. Jason, she says, is funny, sweet, not someone capable of something like this. But by now, the pieces are falling into place. What began as a custody dispute, what looked like fear, anxiety, desperation, has turned into a case where words, timing, and intent may have crossed a line and changed multiple lives forever. Did all of that really happen on Sunday? By the time they return home, it's deep into the night, around 3 or 4 a.m. Curtis denies everything, insists he had nothing to do with any murder-for-hire scheme. But prosecutors aren't convinced. To them, this isn't speculation or bad timing. They believe they have solid evidence linking Curtis directly to the plan. Gas money allegedly sent from Rachel, handwritten notes containing Colby's personal details, witness statements placing Curtis near the scene. To investigators, it paints a troubling picture. "What's going on, Jason?" one asks.
You don't know me, but I'm worried about you." The room is tense. Introductions begin. "I'm Detective Marino. This is Detective Kelly. That's Sergeant Kevin Stahl from the sheriff's office." They acknowledge his confusion, promise to explain everything. First, they need to read him his rights. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in connection with the murder of Colby Vincent. Does the name sound familiar? Then they bring up Rachel. Does he have a stepdaughter by that name? He confirms. They ask about Rachel's ex-boyfriend. Curtis hesitates, claims he doesn't know the man's name, says he's never met him. Detectives circle back to Sunday. Where was he that day? Curtis says he was home most of the time. Anyone to confirm that? His wife. She could verify the story. Asked where she works, he says Huntsville, but doesn't know the exact place. His tone shifts. He doesn't feel comfortable answering more questions until he fully understands what's happening. He admits he knows Rachel was dealing with a custody dispute, but he hasn't been involved with the family for over a decade. All he knows, Rachel didn't want Colby to have the baby. They were arguing over custody. He barely spoke to Christina, hadn't talked to her since his father's funeral years earlier. Detectives remind him, Colby is dead. They tell Jason plainly, despite his alibi, they believe he is lying. Rachel has provided detailed information. Investigators have surveillance footage and other evidence to back it up. They press harder. This is his chance to protect Rachel. He says he doesn't know what else to say. When asked where he went, he finally responds, "A getaway, a chance for him and Angel to relax, see each other." Detectives aren't buying it. This wasn't random, not bad luck. 2 days after the killing, he's sitting in handcuffs with a warrant for first-degree murder. That didn't happen by accident. They make sure he understands. Rachel is already in jail, arrested as an accessory to first-degree murder. Investigators know far more than he realizes. They offer him the chance to help Rachel. Where is his loyalty? Jason says, with Rachel, but he refuses to confess to something he insists he didn't do. He's not willing to spend his life in prison over a lie. Detectives fire back. By staying silent, he's effectively letting Rachel take the fall. He responds coldly. If she's guilty, there's nothing he can do. They ask again, "Do you still believe this is all coincidence?" He admits it's not. Why is he sitting in cuffs? He says they believe he shot someone, but since he didn't, he claims they'll never be able to prove it. Then something slips. Jason mentions the victim had been shot. Detectives immediately picked up on it. No one had told him that detail. When questioned, he says officers mentioned it earlier when they arrested him on Highway 69. He asked what he was being arrested for, was told it was murder. He overheard something about a shooting, but nothing clear. That's when detectives dropped their final line. Rachel had already talked. She told them the truth. And that truth was...
The truth, Jason realized, wasn't just dangerous. It had already ensnared Rachel. It threatened to take Presley from her, to dismantle her entire family. It all stemmed from a moment of trust, a vented frustration Jason had mishandled instead of protecting. The investigation didn't stop there. The following month, all eyes turned to Christina Moore, Rachel's mother. She had been present at the custody exchange. She had stood at the scene the night of the shooting. Investigators charged her as an accessory after the fact. Fear and confusion coursed through her as officers approached. "Please don't hurt me," she said, trembling.
The detectives reassured her, "No harm will come if you cooperate." Christina learned she had a warrant for her arrest, accessory after the fact to a capital felony. Her bond, $150,000. Procedures followed: fingerprints, photographs, documentation. But throughout it all, she was calm enough to be reminded she could be bailed out. Ultimately, Christina Moore would walk free in July 2025. Her charges were dropped, spared the fate that awaited her daughter. Rachel, however, wasn't so fortunate. In April 2025, a jury convicted her of first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Jason Curtis, the one who had pulled the trigger, had been convicted the year before, in May 2024, and was serving a life sentence as well. A bitter custody battle had metastasized into a murder-for-hire plot. A young father, Colby Vincent, was shot dead outside his apartment, while his 4-year-old daughter, Presley, watched from mere feet away. Those closest to him, his child's mother and her former stepfather, were now behind bars for life. Presley lost her father and would grow up with her mother imprisoned. The case became a stark lesson. You don't have to pull the trigger to be convicted of murder. Rachel Moore had learned that the hardest way imaginable. Story 5. This is Brent Springford, Jr. The events he set in motion on Thanksgiving 2004 would challenge the very notion of human nature. How could someone cherished and seemingly fortunate descend into such darkness? Was it sheer malice or the result of years of hidden turmoil? These questions became starkly real when first responders reached his family residence in Montgomery's Garden District. The home was in disarray, yet $47,000 worth of jewelry lay untouched. It was a chilling signal. The story was far from finished. Security footage spanning 4 states would later show the perpetrator traveling 2,100 miles on Greyhound buses under the name Terry Chance, while his relatives believed he was safely hiking in Colorado amid freezing 19-degree temperatures. Montgomery's Garden District wasn't just a street. It represented the life and legacy Brent and Charlotte Springford had nurtured over decades. Records indicate that in 1987, they acquired 127 Felder Avenue for $425,000, roughly $1.3 million today, a prestigious home in a neighborhood where security and tranquility were givens. But the house was only part of the picture. Law enforcement documents show the Garden District had reported 0 violent crimes since 1982. It was one of the most secure areas in the city. Brent Springford Sr. exemplified diligence and determination. Corporate filings highlight how he transformed Montgomery's Pepsi bottling operation from a small team of 12 in 1978 to a regional enterprise employing 340 staff by 2004, generating $47 million in annual revenue. Charlotte, his wife, was equally remarkable. Since 1981, she taught English literature at Alabama State University, earning high praise from students with evaluations averaging 4.8 out of 5. The Springfords were committed to philanthropy. IRS records indicate they contributed $2.3 million to charitable causes from 1990 to 2004. From the Springfield Youth Center to Charlotte Springfield Literacy Fund to Montgomery Food Bank support, they impacted thousands of lives. Yet tragedy had already touched the Springford family. In 1971, they welcomed Stephanie Springfield. But just 6 months later, a blaze erupted at 4421 Narrow Lane Road. It claimed the lives of 6-month-old Stephanie and Charlotte's parents, Margaret and Robert Hayes. The fire was traced to an electrical fault in the nursery wing, It consumed the home around 2:30 a.m. That night, Charlotte and Brent were far from the devastation. They had been attending a Pepsi conference in Mobile, confirmed by convention logs. Despite the heartbreak, they rebuilt their lives around family and resilience. Brent Jr. was born February 3, 1972. His sister Robin followed on November 8, 1974. For over 25 years, the family appeared to flourish, an image of the ideal life in Montgomery's most esteemed and secure neighborhood. Yet more than 1,300 miles away in Greeley, Colorado, another story quietly unfolded. Property records show Brent Jr.'s adult life was already shadowed by darker narratives. He purchased a home at 7741 Saddle Drive in May 2003 for $340,000. There he lived with his wife, Caroline Stout Springford, and her 3 children from a previous marriage. Beneath the polished surface of suburban life, trouble had already begun. Financial ties from Montgomery to Colorado ran deeper than most outsiders could imagine. Bank statements from Wells Fargo showed that without fail, $8,500 was sent every month from Brent and Charlotte Springford to their son.
From 2000 through 2004, Brent Springford Jr. received massive financial support from his parents, totaling nearly $500,000 in transfers, plus credit card payments, insurance, and utilities. Yet Colorado records showed he reported zero income, and his claimed job as a consultant existed only on paper. By November 2004, tensions boiled over when Brent Sr. revised his will, cutting Brent Jr.'s inheritance from $3.2 million to just $100,000, citing lifetime gifts as sufficient support. Emails revealed Brent Jr.'s mounting anger, with messages accusing his father of destroying his family. By Thanksgiving, Brent Jr. was financially desperate, credit cards maxed, rent unpaid, and facing the complete cutoff of parental support. On November 25th, the Springfields traveled home from Birmingham for Thanksgiving dinner, with credit card records tracking stops at Shell Station and Cracker Barrel, and a speeding citation capturing Charlotte Springfield driving a black Jaguar at 81 in a 70 zone. That night, they never made it home. When first responders arrived the next morning, Brent Sr. and Charlotte were found brutally murdered. Blood evidence showed a precise, violent attack with a knife and a wooden pick handle, with both victims sustaining multiple sharp force and defensive wounds. DNA under their fingernails and the choice of weapons indicated the killer knew the home intimately. A ladder had been placed beneath a second-floor window, the only alarm-free entry point. Nothing of value was taken except the family's black Jaguar, which would later be found abandoned in Tulsa with Brent Jr.'s fingerprints inside. Digital forensics revealed weeks of premeditation, researching Greyhound routes, cash requirements, inheritance laws, and Colorado hiking conditions for a fabricated alibi. Emails drafted just before boarding the bus hinted at mounting rage. Surveillance footage captured him traveling under the alias Terry Chance from Alabama to Colorado. Brent Jr.'s hiking alibi collapsed under scrutiny of weather, cameras, and shopping history, while inconsistencies in his wife's statements left a 5-day gap in his whereabouts. Every piece of evidence, planning, travel, and intimate knowledge of the house pointed to a meticulously orchestrated act of revenge, transforming a family dispute and financial desperation into a calculated, tragic murder. Brent Springford Jr., desperate after being cut off financially by his parents, went to extraordinary lengths to disguise himself, shaving his head, leaving scratches on his hands, and traveling across states under an alias, while evidence at the Springfield home began to mount, from muddy boots and a Greyhound ticket stub
to blood-stained jackets and trimmed hair in trash bags, all proving his alibi of hiking in Colorado was impossible. By December 8th, confronted with overwhelming evidence, including camera footage, bus receipts, and fingerprints, Brent Jr. confessed to entering his parents' home through a second-floor window, taking knives from the kitchen and methodically murdering his father first, followed by his mother, with every action carefully planned and executed. His motive went beyond money, rooted in control, respect, and dominance, as he meticulously studied schedules, anticipated visitors, and ensured no one could intervene, with medical evidence confirming the defensive injuries sustained by his mother. The subsequent trial presented 47 witnesses, 294 exhibits, and hours of surveillance footage tracing his 2,100-mile journey and premeditated actions. And after just over 4 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted him of 2 counts of capital murder, sentencing him to life without parole. His sister Robin inherited the estate, creating the Charlotte and Brent Springfield Fund to support survivors of domestic violence and provide scholarships for social work students, while the community of Montgomery's Garden District enhanced home security and annual safety inspections, leaving a chilling legacy of meticulous planning, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of calculated violence. Tragically, such horrors are not unique. On Thanksgiving weekend, November 29, 1998, in Muskegon, Michigan, 18-year-old Seth Puvacki murdered 5 family members, including his sister April and her boyfriend, Jed Puvacki, after openly discussing his plans beforehand, proving that even in seemingly ordinary families, cold, calculated evil can shatter lives, leaving survivors and communities forever haunted by the consequences of such actions. Seth Puvacki, an 18-year-old from Muskegon, Michigan, had spent years building a facade of normalcy while hiding a troubling pattern of behavior, including prior arrests for theft and a diagnosis of major depressive disorder. But nothing suggested he would escalate to murder until 1 week before Thanksgiving 1998, when he told his best friend, Stephen Wallace, in chilling detail that he planned to kill his entire family, using his father's .22 caliber Ruger pistol and making it look like a robbery, a warning Wallace dismissed as a joke. That Sunday evening, November 29th, the plan unfolded with deadly precision. Jed Puvacki, 19, was shot in the right temple in the living room with no chance to react, while Stephen Puvacki and their grandfather John returned from errands and were ambushed. Stephen shot once in the back of the head, John twice in the head, with a cold determination to ensure death. Upstairs, unaware, Linda Puvacki was shot at close range in her robe shortly after showering, the powder burns confirming the proximity and intent, and the meticulous nature of the killings demonstrated careful planning, timing, and calculation, all carried out in a home once considered safe and ordinary. Wallace, witnessing the aftermath, chose not to call 911 immediately, instead assisting with cleanup, a decision that haunted him and investigators for years, highlighting the shocking betrayal and the horrific consequences of ignoring warning signs. Forensic evidence, including bullet trajectories, time of death estimations, and medical examinations by Dr. Sarah Hendricks, combined with phone records and witness statements, created a clear timeline of Seth's premeditated actions, leaving a devastated community grappling with the reality that even ordinary families can harbor unimaginable darkness, and that warning signs, however casually dismissed, can precede tragedy. The shot rang out from less than 3 feet away. Dr. Whitman noted that Clara had instinctively raised her hands, likely in surprise or to protect herself, and the bullet had passed through her palm before striking her chest. The last to arrive, 17-year-old Hannah Drake, pulled into the driveway around 6:10 p.m., confirmed by her phone records, with a final call at 6:08 p.m. She had been heading over to study with her brother, Aaron, taking the same advanced science course. Lucas, her older brother, let her in, but forensic analysis indicated she had barely taken 4 steps inside before seeing Aaron collapsed on the floor. The angle of the wound suggested she looked up at the moment of the shot, leaving her mere seconds to comprehend what was happening before her death. Jacob Ellis, a family friend, later gave a confession under an immunity agreement, detailing the horrifying cover-up that followed. When he arrived at 6:50 p.m., he saw Lucas dragging the grandfather, William Drake, toward the driveway, unnervingly calm. Lucas instructed him to stage the scene as a burglary, making it appear that intruders had forced entry. Against his better judgment, Jacob helped. Together, they moved William's body face down onto the concrete as if he had been shot while fleeing, relocated the other victims to simulate a struggle, dragged Aaron from the living room into the hallway, repositioned Clara on the couch, surrounded by cushions, and staged Hannah near the door with her bag scattered as if searched. The entire process took nearly an hour. At 7:20 p.m., surveillance footage from a neighborhood convenience store captured the teenagers buying cleaning supplies, 1 gallon of bleach, rubber gloves, and 2 rolls of paper towels, totaling $13.12. The clerk later testified that neither appeared anxious or unusual, chatting casually about a local football game. Back at the house, they mopped floors, wiped surfaces, and attempted to remove evidence linking Lucas to the murders. Jacob described feeling physically ill twice during the cleanup, while Lucas remained meticulous and focused. At 7:50 p.m., nearby security cameras recorded Lucas disposing of a plastic bag in a community dumpster. Days later, the bag was recovered, containing 6.5mm shell casings with Lucas's partial fingerprints. His attempt at creating an alibi also failed. At 8:35 p.m., he tried using his father's debit card at a local bank. The transaction was declined due to an incorrect PIN. Security footage showed him attempting multiple codes before giving up, placing him at the scene hours after he had claimed to have discovered the bodies. Concern grew when Hannah's parents, Robert and Elaine Drake, arrived around 9 p.m. to find no response at the house. The front door was slightly ajar, the only light coming from the television still flickering inside. Elaine called 911 at 9:07 p.m., her voice trembling but composed. "I think someone is dead, lying in the driveway." Patrol Officer Mark Reynolds arrived at 9:15 p.m., later testifying how the scale of the tragedy immediately became clear. He radioed code 187, multiple victims, requesting every available unit and crime scene specialists. While securing the property, he noticed movement in the backyard. A short foot chase ended with the arrest of Jacob Ellis as he tried to flee. Jacob immediately admitted his involvement and revealed where Lucas might be hiding. Within the hour, a county-wide alert was issued for Lucas Drake, 18 years old, 5'11", 160 pounds, brown hair, considered armed and highly dangerous. A command post was established as search teams scoured the area. By 5 a.m., Lincoln High School was placed on full lockdown. Principal Meredith Cole recorded a statement for staff. "We don't know where he is or whether he has harmed himself. If there's any immediate danger, we will evacuate." The case broke open at 10:15 p.m. when 18-year-old Tanya Morelli, leaving community college, spotted a lone figure walking along Route 72, soaked in dew and mud up to his knees. Despite fear, she stayed calm and drove him 3 miles to a nearby gas station. As he stepped out, she called 911. By 11:20 p.m., law enforcement located Lucas hiding in an abandoned barn less than a mile from his family's home. He surrendered without resistance, covered in scratches consistent with moving through undergrowth. Lucas was booked at 11:40 a.m., read his Miranda rights 3 minutes later, and transported for questioning. Detective Sarah McConnell began the interview at 2 p.m., recorded on video. Lucas appeared unnervingly calm, speaking in monotone. When asked what happened, he responded without hesitation, "I shot them, all of them, my family, Hannah." His confession was precise, devoid of emotion. He described retrieving the weapon from his father's closet at 5:50 p.m., loading it in his room, and waiting until Aaron was alone in the living room. "I shot him first so he couldn't fight back," he admitted. When asked about William, he said, "He would have been upset about the others. I didn't want him to be upset, so I made sure." Pressed on his motive, his explanation revealed a twisted logic. "They were always against me. Dad wanted me gone. Mom supported him. Aaron was perfect. I was the failure. Then at least I would do something they'll never forget." On December 2, 2012, the county prosecutor filed 5 counts of open murder, the most severe charges in the state. The complaint detailed each victim, estimated times of death, and evidence of premeditation. At arraignment, Lucas entered a not guilty plea, requesting a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Karen Field's report concluded he understood the charges and could participate in his defense, though she described pronounced narcissistic traits, limited empathy, and a consistent tendency to blame others for his actions. Meanwhile, Jacob faced legal proceedings, ultimately reduced to accessory charges due to his cooperation.
In late October 2012, the Miller family faced a nightmare that no one could have predicted. Lucas Harper, the youngest son of Marcia and Robert Miller, had always been a quiet, unassuming teenager in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, Oregon. Marcia, a middle school librarian, and Robert, a local construction foreman, were pillars of the community, known for their generosity and steady presence. Their 2 children, Lucas, 17, and his sister, Eliza, 15, seemed well-adjusted, though neighbors occasionally noticed Lucas disappearing for hours into the nearby forest. Financial tensions had begun to strain the family over the summer. Lucas had recently lost a part-time job at a hardware store and relied heavily on his parents' support. Disagreements over allowances and car payments escalated into arguments that grew more frequent and more intense. On the evening of October 31st, what started as a minor dispute over Lucas's overdue school fees escalated catastrophically. In a meticulously planned act of violence, Lucas waited until his parents were distracted in the living room before striking. Marcia was the first victim, suffering fatal injuries with a blunt object taken from the garage, while Robert tried to defend himself and was overpowered. Eliza, returning from a friend's house, witnessed her family's collapse before Lucas forced her into a room, threatening her life if she called for help. Lucas had spent months preparing. Surveillance of family routines, stolen keys, and even hacked emails revealed the depth of his premeditation. He staged the scene to look like an intruder's home invasion, leaving doors unlocked, windows slightly ajar, and minor property items displaced to support the ruse. Despite the chilling nature of the crime, he attempted to create an alibi, telling neighbors he had been out at a friend's house and fabricating social media posts from the night of the attack. Yet evidence quickly unraveled his lies. Muddy footprints traced a path from the garage to the family room,
and fingerprints on the weapon and doorknobs matched Lucas's own. A security camera across the street caught him sneaking back home shortly after his supposed outing. The arrest was swift. Lucas was found in a nearby abandoned cabin, exhausted and detached, clutching the object used in the murders. During questioning, he admitted to every detail of the attack with a calm, mechanical precision, claiming he had been driven not by financial need, but by a need to assert control over a life he felt was slipping from him. His sister, Eliza, placed into protective care, testified during the trial, recounting the horror of discovering her parents' bodies and the calculated demeanor of her brother. In court, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: photographs, surveillance footage, financial records, and Lucas's own digital footprints meticulously documenting his planning. Despite attempts by his defense to argue immaturity and psychological stress, the jury found him fully responsible. In March 2014, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The community of Willow Creek struggled to comprehend the betrayal. Local organizations established a fund in Marcia and Robert's memory, offering scholarships to students pursuing library sciences and vocational trades, honoring the parents' passions. Eliza moved to another state, seeking a fresh start, and therapy programs for teens in the region were restructured to include mandatory mental health check-ins. Even years later, the Miller case serves as a grim reminder that darkness can exist behind familiar faces, and that vigilance, empathy, and awareness are essential to prevent tragedy in even the most peaceful communities.